Welcome to Heart-Based Medicine's Heart of Healthcare podcast, featuring Stephan Laur, Qigong Master, a Qigong approach to heart-based medicine.
I'm really pleased to invite Stephan Laur today with me. Hi Stephan.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
You've been, or you are, a Qigong master and healer and practitioner. Tell us a little bit about Qigong and how you got to become a Qigong practitioner.
Actually, I got to that, as many do, through an illness when I was in my 20s. After being in Central America, I had some diseases and school medicine wouldn't really help me. They just gave me some tablets that really ease it a little bit. I said that to a friend of mine she was a little older than me, and she worked in a medical practice. And she said, "But why don't you come to us? The doctor I work with, he does acupuncture." He was one of the first ones to do that in Basel here. So I went to see him, and actually he really helped me. Just the first session helped. And after a year it was really, really easy. And after some sessions he told me, "But maybe it would be good to do something for yourself." And he suggested some things. I was interested in doing Tai Chi and Qigong, and so I started to do that. And the teacher I had there, after some years, she got to know a Chinese master who did what we call a style which is called silent Qigong, or Qigong of silence, which is a kind of inner Qigong style. And I was very fascinated of that work, which is not so much form, not so much classical moving forms, but it's more an inner work. Of course you move and everything, you have different movements, positions and gestures and everything, but the main thing is the mind. And then I got to know this master, Li Chichang is his name. He comes from Beijing and he lives in Munich. So I got to know this and I was very fascinated, and then okay, my destiny was completed kind of, because since then I'm stuck with him. He's my master, and I started to do first courses, then a Qigong trainers course, and about 10 more. And then I got his master student, and for some years now I even teach there at his institute for beginners. So that was very fascinating for me, and it really changed my life.
Wow, that does sound fascinating. Yeah. You have a personal experience and you also work with patients?
Yes, I do. After then I did also training in what we call Tuina or acupressure. So I combine that a little bit. I do treatments and acupressure, Tuina, massage. But my main work is actually Qigong. After you do a massage, you do some acupressure, you can also give the clients some different exercises, or maybe even just another thought to change the view. Because the main thing in Qigong, most people think Qigong is just something where you move slowly and maybe you breathe deeply or something like that, which is true, that is one part of it. But the main thing is not some funny movement or some strange position for us sometimes, but the main thing is what happens in your mind. That's the important thing.
Tell us about that.
I mean, we think in Qigong that the mind and the body, they are connected, not only connected, but they are more or less the same in a different form of tension. So they're like, and in between there is energy, which is qi. Qi just means life force or life energy. And in this Taoist point of view, we think that there are 3 energies or substances, so sometimes we call it. One is called Shen, which is translated as mind, which means everything in the mind, just like thoughts and everything, but it means also higher mind. Actually, the word Shen can also be translated as spirituality or even God. Then we have Qing with its essence, This is the lowest. This is physical energy. Actually, if you see it a little broader, it's everything physical. Is essence, qing. And in between there is qi, energy. This is three substances. But in their real nature, they're not different. They are the same in a different density.
Uh-huh.
So you could say that energy is condensed mind, and body then is condensed qi, energy, or the physical. So we say there is a very, very straight connection between those. And actually there is a very important law, which is, I think, the most important law in qigong, is where your mind goes, the energy will come. And when the qi, the energy flows, also the blood will come into motion. So, which actually means where we bring our attention to, something happens also in the body. What we imagine happens sooner or later in our body. And that is also the explanation, actually, from a qigong point of view, that we have all these phenomena of placebo effect. That's actually something that they knew already 2,000 years ago, and they based their practice after that. That whatever you do will have an effect, at least, in your body. So you must be quite mindful how you bring the attention to your body.
I mean, that opens many questions. So just, having gone down the road of conventional medicine, focusing very much on qing, I guess, focusing very much on the matter, on the body, on the physical body.
Yeah.
And then at some point, kind of psychosomatic medicine became fashionable. So then the psyche was kind of, neurology and psychiatry were kind of one discipline, and then that got separated. And so there is a recognition that the mind and the body somehow interact. But the level of the qi is really not so well embraced in current conventional medicine.
Of course.
And so you're saying in qigong, the basis of that, or one of the basic premises, is that where we bring our attention is where energy flows, and where energy flows, this will have an effect on our material body. Yes.
I mean, sometimes it happens quite quickly. So, for example, we do. When I have a beginner's class, we do an experiment, and this is quite funny. So where people bring they measure their hands like that, and then they bring like the right hand up, and the left is on the lap, just down, and then we have for 3 minutes we think our hand is growing. It's growing, it's growing, it's growing, and after 3 minutes, like 90% even of a beginner's class, when they bring the hands together again, the hand that we thought of it will grow, it's really bigger. Sometimes like 2 or 3 centimeters, like such a bit. So it's really crazy. Of course, it's just a hand, and that's an impact that comes and it goes back again.
And you check this out. They're not
check
cheating.
You check this out like this.
You're not cheating.
You have here lines, and then you try, and then you do like this. And you do it with the hand that looks upward, so you can't say it's just because the blood flows in too. So that's just for that reason. And it really works. So you can see there is an effect. So this is an immediate effect. But if you, for example, have a broken leg or some disease in your stomach or something like that, of course it takes longer. You can't just bring a positive thought down and it's away. So you have to practice that for some time. You have to cultivate. Traditional word is self-cultivation. You have to cultivate your state of mind, your thoughts, the pictures, because they have an influence on your body.
Give us an example. So maybe you can give us an example from a patient you worked with, or from your own experience.
For example, one possibility, for example, is to do it with special techniques of breathing and imagination. We call that qi breathing, the energy breathing. And then once, when my son was quite little, I had him in a backpack kind of thing, and I went up a mountain, quite steep, and actually it was a little too big for that. And when I went down, I really hurt my knee, and luckily he was asleep, so I could just put him there, and I sat there and I did that exercise. I put my hands on my knee, and I just did for like 15 minutes, and it was really hurting. And it was already a little swollen, I could see. So I went there and I did my breathing, and I mean, the way back was like an hour down the hill, so that would have been quite a challenge with that hurting knee and a 3 years old or 4 years old child on my back. I did that breathing, and with that imagination, with every out breath, healing energy goes into my knee, and this knee is very strong and very healthy. And after 15 minutes I could walk down. I didn't have any pain anymore. Afterwards I still felt it a little bit, but I surely could walk down, and I was quite sure I wouldn't have worked so well if I wouldn't have done that.
Interesting. So what you've done is imagining a state of health rather than changing a state of disease.
This is very important, actually. We don't have the picture or the imagination of the illness or the injury going away, but we imagine that organ or body part or joint, whatever it is, as being healthy. Sometimes we have, like, as I did in that exercise, another imagination that light is coming into that part, but we never imagine the illness going away. We only imagine it being good. So we only have the positive thought. We only have the thought, but actually the imagination where we wish it to go to.
That is very interesting. So, coming from a conventional medicine background, where the focus is on what should the normal body in its physical sense be like, look like, work like, and then we call disease everything that is different from that defined state of normality, or this range of normality. And the medical approach, the conventional medical approach, is to change the state, to do something about the state of disease in order to regain the state of normality. While what you're doing is, in a way, what it sounds like is you almost disregard the change of abnormality, but really just focus on the state of normality. This is where the energy flows.
I mean, there are also practices sometimes where you start with like energies where you bring the injured energy or the bad energy away. This can be a help at the beginning, but the main part is always, as you said, you focus on what should be and on the positive state, and not on what you want to have away. Because I think there's also a law that is, for example, I see some connection. I also have a training in medical or psychological hypnotherapy, and actually there one law that I learned there is never to use not or no, because the unconscious doesn't really is not really able to understand the no. So if you say there is no pain, there's a quite big possibility that your subconscious understands just pain. That here's pain. So we don't say, so we have only this positive, so we don't have that thought, the illness goes away, because then the illness is in my focus. I have the imagination, there is very pure healing energy there, and this joint or this liver is very strong, it's getting stronger all the time, like that.
So from a qigong point of view, what do you think about the conventional medicine tradition to make diagnoses and communicate diagnoses? Where we're saying, like, you have this problem. Is that the opposite? Is that like, you know?
No, I mean, we have. I also have a training in traditional Chinese medicine, like acupressure, trainer, and we also have there like diseases or disorders, as we call it actually, or disharmonies. Very often it's translated, and we say like it's a weakness of the liver energy or something like that. We also say where the problem is. And I think actually that Western medicine and traditional Chinese medicine, they work quite well together. But on both parts we have to be very, very conscious what we think and what we say. Actually, this problem, what I say, what a lot of like Western doctors have a tendency to go to talk about the problem. I actually had the same experience with practitioners in traditional Chinese medicine. Also, they can focus on, oh, I see your liver qi is rising up and bringing everything in disorder, or something like that. So actually, I don't think that Western medicine and Chinese medicine and qigong, that they are kind of contradictory. I think they work very, very well together, actually. But I think it's very important to really see where does healing really occur. It's in yourself. And that's not something that comes from outside. In the classic of Chinese medicine, the Yellow Emperor, they say, the most important doctor is yourself. And so this knowledge that you have inside, this energy, they call it the inner doctor. And the job, or what can an external doctor or therapist do? He can only show you the way to waken up your inner healer. So I think that's a very important thing, and there's no contradiction. You can take a pill or have an operation and still work with your mind and bring the positive energy inside. So we can really combine the positive effects of both.
I mean, you obviously have good experience with it, and obviously an entire nation like China relies on this for thousands of years. So there has to be something about it.
Yeah.
Is there in the Western philosophy of science, is there evidence for me? Is there an added benefit that is proven in the kind of Western scientific way? Is there?
There have been done some studies in China in the time of opening in the 90s where they did stuff like that, but they all didn't have Western standards, so you can't really tell about them. But so I don't know if there are studies on qigong specifically, but there are many studies on the influence of the mind. Like, for example, studies of the placebo effect, where I think a lot of you know that very famous study of the knee operation, where they had 3 groups where they wanted to try out actually which of 2 possible methods of operation is better. And so they had 2 groups of like 100 people, quite big group. And then they had a third one. In the third group, they didn't do anything. They just made a cut and then they stitched it again. And everybody had some therapy after, and a year after they checked out. And the very amazing thing was that the 3 groups had all the same effect. And that's really what we do in qigong, but in a different way. People thought their knee had been fixed, had been operated, and it really happened. My master always said, it is not scientific. He actually is a science. He studied physics in China, but he came from an old lineage of traditional Chinese medicine doctors and qigong masters. So that was what he learned as a child. And then he really says, and I think it's true, it's not scientific because it's very individual. It just happens in you, and in me it is a little different than what happens to you. So we can't really have an exact proof. We just can try it out and then live it.
Possibly the approach is different. So possibly this approach to medicine requires a different approach to clinical studies that still needs to be elaborated on.
Yes.
To me, there's no limit to science. We have a hypothesis here, and we don't really understand fully how to prove this hypothesis. It's interesting that your master has been studying physics, as there's such a dramatic change in physics in demonstrating how close the relation between energy and matter is. Possibly there's evidence emerging.
Yeah, and I think actually you can say on one hand it's not scientific, but the other hand I think it is quite scientific, because you have to have that like scientific mind to find out inside yourself. So you can do some experiments in yourself, like for example the one with the hand. And maybe we could do one thing here in the podcast. We could just try it out. Maybe it works. I have never done it over computer, but I think it will work as well. So shall we do that?
Sure.
Maybe we can try out if we can feel the effect of qi or the effect of our thoughts to our body directly. I think we do the hand experiment. So we have a thin line here on our wrist, on each one, so we can really bring those two together in both hands. We really look that it's really on the same height. They really touch each other, and then we look, do both hands have exactly the same length? Normally it is more or less. Some people it is not, but that's no problem. We just memorize how it is. And then we put the left hand on our lap, and the right hand besides our shoulder or our ear, like that. We close our eyes. Close your eyes and imagine that your hand is growing. Your hand is growing and growing and growing. And energy is expanding in your physics, not only in the muscles and in the skin and everywhere, even also in the bones. Everything is growing. All the fingers, all the bones, your whole hand is growing and growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. Oh, the physical of your hand is expanding. It's expanding and getting bigger and bigger. You only have this one thought for like 2 or 3 minutes. Your hand is growing, it's growing, it's growing. Think it, imagine it, tell it to yourself. Your hand is growing, it's getting bigger. Energy is expanding in every cell of your hand, in the bones, in the muscle, in the ligaments, everywhere. And everything is growing. Your hand is growing. We do it for about 30 seconds more, and now really focus. Your hand is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. And now we come back, we open our eyes, we bring both hands together, we look that they're on the same size, and now we look as one bigger. You see, my hand is quite different. How is it in yours? Did it grow? It really grew, yeah, like
hang on a
quite
minute.
something.
Huh?
Yeah, okay. It worked. I don't know how it works, if this really works when you do it guided on computer, but it worked with you, Jan. That's
pretty cool.
Yeah. Actually, that is something that we do in beginners classes so people see. And then we say, of course, if this works with your hand, why shouldn't it work with your knee? Why shouldn't it work with your liver or something that you bring an effect? Of course, not in the same speed, but if we have constant positive thought, we think, this liver is really strong and really healthy, or this knee is really strong, it is full of energy, it is vivid, then of course this will have an effect. To have a long-term positive effect, of course you have to do it. Best would be all the time, more or less, to cultivate. Because, I mean, what do we do normally? And this is something, when people come to me, for example, with a back pain, what I really often hear, they say, oh, my back, it's really killing me. I mean, this damped back is just killing me. It's just a piece of... You talk to your body like that, you say, you're rubbish, you're damned, you're bad, I hate you. People say things like that. I mean, of course, it will act like that, it will change. And we have to change that. That's a programming. Mm-hmm. And actually, if we reprogram it and we cultivate, and that's actually the traditional name for qigong that they had before, self-cultivation. If you cultivate positive thoughts, positive energy, you cultivate not to say, oh, my body is rubbish, but no, there's light, there's strength in my body, the energy is flowing and I get better all the time. I'm connected with a higher energy and it flows in me. And we do some exercises with that state of mind, it will change. Of course, if we then combine it with movement, with breathing and everything that we do in qigong, then the effect is even better. But the heart of it is the state of mind.
Amazing. So there are clearly ways of how the mind can influence our body energies, and the body energies kind of create a field within the for the particles to move in or to behave in. There's some kind of influence.
Some kind.
Remains to be understood, but clearly there's old wisdom. Great. Thank you, Stephan. Thank you for joining us.
It was very interesting to talk to you.
This has been a Heart-Based Medicine production. Thanks for listening.